In a vast galaxy where countless alien civilizations coexist, there exists a mystery that no species dares to approach: Earth. They call it the Death World, a planet teeming with dangers, where every living being has survived the harshest tests of evolution. After 3 centuries of isolation from the Galactic Union due to its perceived threat, humanity has finally been given a chance to rejoin the vast universe, represented by a young woman named Kira, who has been chosen to attend the prestigious Galactic Academy. But Kira could not have anticipated that mere hours after setting foot in the academy, she would become the epicenter of an unprecedented crisis. The academy's advanced security system, designed to handle threats from the most dangerous beings in the universe, sounded a red alert over one simple fact: her existence. The entire Union is suddenly forced to confront a terrifying question: could humanity be the greatest threat the galaxy has ever known? Amid shimmering corridors bathed in the light of 3 suns, Kira must prove that humanity is not just a species that thrives under harsh conditions but one that holds the power to transform the galaxy forever. And she must do so quickly, for the Academy's steel doors are trembling, and behind them, the security forces are ready to unleash their full might. At the heart of the Intergalactic Academy, where thousands of civilizations from across the galaxy converge, an emergency meeting was underway. On a massive holographic screen, the image of Aiko Lin, the first student from Earth, was prominently displayed. Her deep, black eyes stared directly into the camera, unflinching, as the security system flashed a glaring red warning: maximum threat level entity. Immediate isolation recommended. Aiko was confined in an airtight isolation chamber, the cold, blue light from the ceiling casting a harsh glow. Across from her stood the Academy's Security Council, a group comprised of representatives from the most powerful races in the Galactic Union. Each figure was strikingly distinct, from the luminous, translucent bodies of the Kavaks to the living metallic bio-armor of the Marin. Yet they all shared a wary gaze as they observed the young girl from Earth. "Explain yourself, Zakir," the head of the council demanded in a deep voice. "How could you, a young individual, trigger the galaxy's most advanced security system?" Aiko folded her arms, showing no sign of concern. "I don't know," she replied coolly. "Maybe your system is faulty. Earth isn't as dangerous as you think." Zakir tilted his head, his sharp eyes scrutinizing her every move. "Not dangerous? We know about Earth. A planet riddled with deadly storms, predators larger than starships, and humans a species that has spent millennia waging war against itself. What part of that makes you think you're not a threat?" Aiko suppressed a smirk. "And that's precisely why you fear us, isn't it? Because we survived." While the council deliberated Aiko's fate, outside the isolation chamber, a group of students from various planets had gathered. Hel, a small, furry creature from the planet Zelver, was trying to understand why Aiko had been detained. "Aren't humans just a primitive species?" Hel asked Vector, a student from Kryth whose body was as transparent as crystal. "Not exactly," Vector replied, his voice resonating like the chime of metal. "They've been isolated from the galaxy for 3 centuries. But I've heard that during that time, they evolved in ways no one could predict. Some say their ability to adapt is terrifyingly fast." Hel shuddered. "But she looks ordinary. Small, fragile. How could someone like her be dangerous?" Vector fell silent. "That's what's unsettling. If they're not relying on brute strength, then what are they relying on?" Back in the isolation chamber, Zakir continued his interrogation. "The security system detected biological activity in you far exceeding safe thresholds. Your DNA shows signs of extreme mutations, with an ability to adapt to harsh environments far beyond any species in the Union. Explain this. Aiko shrugged. That's not my fault. If you lived on a planet like Earth, you'd be like me too. What do you mean? Earth is unlike any other planet in this galaxy. We don't have the luxury of fear or hesitation. Everything can kill us: climate, predators, even our own kind. But instead of perishing, we learn to overcome. We're not dangerous, we're the product of a planet that constantly tests the limits of life. Her words left the council in silence. But Zucker was not convinced. Then why does the system detect you as a threat? What are you hiding? Aiko stared directly at him, her gaze sharp as a blade. I'm hiding nothing. But maybe you're afraid of what I represent. And what is that? A future you can't control. As the council continued their deliberation, outside, Pell and Vector decided to investigate further into Aiko. They sneaked into the Academy's data archives and searched for records on Earth. What they found left them stunned. Earth was not only a planet teeming with natural hazards but also home to some of the greatest civilizations and fastest self-destructions the galaxy had ever seen. Look at this, Pell said, his voice trembling. Nuclear wars, environmental collapse, even rogue artificial intelligence. They survived all of it. How does a species like that endure? Vector stared at the screen, his luminous body reflecting the data. They endure because they don't give up. And that's what makes them different. They're not the strongest species, but they're the most resilient. Back in the isolation chamber, Aiko's confinement was interrupted by a deafening explosion outside. The alarm lights turned red. A voice over the intercom announced, "The Academy is under attack. All students proceed to designated shelters immediately." The council quickly evacuated, leaving Aiko alone in the chamber. But she didn't panic. Looking through the glass, she saw a group of alien invaders advancing, armed with powerful energy weapons. Aiko smirked. "Looks like you're going to need my help after all." The door to the isolation chamber burst open with a loud explosion, filling the room with smoke and debris. A squad of security drones surged in, their red scanning lights sweeping across the room in search of Aiko. She had already moved from her seat, hiding behind a ventilation console. In a swift motion, she grabbed a sharp piece of metal from the wreckage on the floor and hurled it toward an approaching drone. The drone's sensor was disrupted by the makeshift projectile, causing it to spin wildly, its red light flashing erratically. Seizing the chaos, Aiko bolted into the hallway, where the emergency alarms blared relentlessly. She didn't stop or look back, her focus razor sharp on her escape. Her eyes scanned the environment, analyzing every detail for something she could turn into an advantage. The security drones pursued her, emitting sharp mechanical sounds as they closed in. Aiko sprinted down a long corridor, the flickering ceiling lights casting intermittent shadows that would have disoriented anyone else. But not her. Earth had prepared her for this. Enduring physical discomfort and mental strain was second nature. She rounded a hidden corner and spotted a large exhaust duct used to vent hazardous gases from the labs. Without hesitation, Aiko jumped, gripping the edge of the duct, and hoisted herself inside. Inside the dark and narrow duct, the stifling heat and humidity made it hard to breathe, but Aiko pressed on, crawling through tight bends using her hands and knees. She recalled countless days on Earth when she had crawled through rubble for food or to evade predators. Those weren't pleasant memories, but they had taught her to use confined spaces to her advantage. Behind her, the hum of drone engines began to fade. Their sensors weren't optimized for cramped, obstacle-filled environments like this duct. However, Aiko knew she couldn't linger here for long. At the end of the duct, she pushed open a grate and slid into a maintenance room filled with glowing control panels and tangled wires. Spotting a screen displaying the Academy's layout, she quickly located her position and plotted a route toward the escape pods. If she could reach them, she might just get out of this alive. But the plan wasn't going to be easy. The moment she stepped out of the maintenance room, another squad of drones awaited her. These were different. They didn't just fire stun beams but also launched energy nets designed to immobilize her. Aiko ducked and rolled to avoid a net that zipped past her head. She noticed one of the drones flying lower than the others, a vulnerability she could exploit. Grabbing a metal rod from the floor, she waited for the right moment. When the drone dipped even lower, she leapt and jammed the rod into its central sensor. The drone exploded in a flash of light, sending out a short EMP wave that temporarily disrupted the remaining drones. That was all the time Aiko needed. She darted into another hallway, her feet moving faster than exhaustion could catch up. Her mind worked like a finely tuned machine. She recalled lessons from her physics classes on Earth, how materials interacted, the principles of mechanics. Her eyes landed on a large tank at the end of the hallway labeled, "Coolant do not expose to high temperatures." Aiko quickly formulated a plan. She opened a small valve on the tank, letting a stream of coolant spill onto the floor. As the drones closed in, oblivious to the potential hazard, she grabbed a fallen energy rifle from a damaged drone and fired at the puddle. The resulting explosion wasn't massive, but it was enough to destroy the pursuing drones. Aiko didn't stop to admire her handiwork. She kept moving, aware that the noise would draw more attention. Finally, she reached the escape pod bay, but it was far from unguarded. A squad of heavily armed security officers awaited her, wielding advanced energy weapons. Aiko paused, taking a deep breath. She didn't have the firepower to face them head-on, but she had something they didn't: limitless adaptability. Scanning her surroundings, she spotted a control panel on the wall that managed the area's gravity systems. Staying low and hidden, she edged toward it, inputting a sequence to deactivate gravity. The guards didn't have time to react as gravity abruptly disappeared. They floated helplessly in the air, their weapons spinning out of their reach. In the ensuing chaos, Aiko navigated through them with precision, disarming them before they could adjust. When gravity resumed moments later, Aiko stood as the only one in control. She secured the guards, commandeered an escape pod, and launched herself away from the Galactic Union Academy. From the cockpit of the pod, she looked back at the massive structure, a symbol of interstellar unity but also a place that refused to embrace difference. Aiko clenched her fist. "You can call me dangerous," she muttered. "But that's only because you're afraid of what you can't control. Earth taught us to evolve, and that terrifies you." In the quiet expanse of the escape pod, Aiko felt the emptiness surrounding her. The control panel flickered dimly, displaying the ship's coordinates and safe orbit. Her heart was still racing, adrenaline yet to subside from the harrowing escape. She looked through the small viewport, where the starlight stretched into long streaks against the inky black backdrop. She was temporarily safe, at least, for now. A sound broke the silence behind her. Aiko turned, weapon in hand, ready for another confrontation. But instead of an enemy, she saw two familiar figures. Quarim and Sira, the alien students from her class, stood in the doorway of the pressure chamber. Their faces were marked with exhaustion and concern. "Aiko, we're here to help," Quarim said, his voice gentle yet urgent. "But we also need to tell you the truth." Aiko lowered her weapon, her gaze cautious but no longer tense. The truth? Why am I seen as a threat? Why was Earth isolated? Sira stepped forward, placing her long, three-fingered hand gently on Aiko's shoulder. It's not because your kind is violent or dangerous, as they've claimed. It's because of something much bigger, something deeper. We believe you have the right to know. They sat on the floor of the pod, in the cramped space, but it was peaceful enough for a conversation. Sira began slowly, as if afraid to cause Aiko any more pain. Earth is unlike any other planet in the galaxy. It's the only place where evolution is not confined to a single ecosystem. Humans, animals, plants, they're all in a constant state of change, growth, competition, and adaptation at a pace no other planet can match. Quarim continued, throughout Galactic Union history, there have been many attempts to understand Earth and its people. But instead of integrating, these studies have only made us more fearful. Humans don't just fight to survive, you create change, pushing everything around you to evolve in uncontrollable ways. That's the real reason the Union decided to isolate your planet. Not because we hate you, but because we fear the unpredictability that you and your species bring. Aiko furrowed her brow. Fear? Because we're creative and adaptable? That's absurd. We just want to survive, like any other species. Sira sighed. Yes, but your creativity knows no bounds. When pushed to the brink, you don't just find a way to survive, you turn limitations into opportunities. You can look at a harsh environment and find a way to use it to your advantage. No one else can do this at the level humanity does. It's a gift, but it's also what makes you terrifying in the eyes of other species. Quarim raised his hand, projecting an image using a device on his wrist. A 3D hologram appeared, showing an ancient Galactic Union document. In it, Earth and humanity were linked with the phrase, unstable catalyst. This document is the final conclusion from the researchers, Quarim explained. They called Earth the catalyst planet because anything that comes into contact with humans is changed biologically, environmentally, even the way systems operate. No one in the Union wants to risk allowing Earth to interact with the rest of the galaxy. Aiko stared intently at the image before her. Memories of Earth flooded back, ruined forests where she once hunted, shattered cities full of machinery left by her ancestors. Everything was a cycle of destruction and rebirth. She began to understand the meaning behind what Sira and Quarim were saying. You're afraid we'll change the galaxy the way we've changed Earth, Aiko whispered, her voice trailing off in thought. But that doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? Change can lead to progress. Sira nodded, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Exactly. Not all members of the Union agree with Earth's isolation. Some believe that, if guided properly, you and those like you could bring the kind of innovation the entire galaxy needs. Quarim placed his hand on Aiko's shoulder. That's why we're here. We believe in you, Aiko. You're the bridge between Earth and the galaxy. But to do that, you need to understand the gift and the responsibility you carry. Quarim's words hung heavy in the small space of the pod. Aiko closed her eyes, trying to absorb everything that had just been revealed. For the first time in her life, she felt the weight of destiny on her shoulders, not just to survive, but to represent an entire planet, an entire civilization. Thank you, Aiko said after a long silence. Thank you for telling me the truth. I don't know if I can change everything, but I won't run anymore. Earth isn't just where I'm from. It's what shaped me, and I'll use that to find a way to integrate with this galaxy my way. The three of them exchanged glances, a sense of mutual understanding bridging the gap between their species. And in that moment, Aiko knew her journey was just beginning. She was no longer just an individual fleeing from enemies. She was now the hope for harmony between Earth and the vast universe. Aiko stood before the Grand Hall of the Galactic Union Academy, where delegates from hundreds of different species were quietly watching her. Every gaze held a mixture of emotions: curiosity, skepticism, fear, and a glimmer of hope. Aiko's heart raced, but she knew this was her only chance to change how the entire galaxy viewed Earth and humanity. Behind her, a large screen displayed an image of Earth, a blue planet with swirling white clouds, vibrant yet fragile. "You have called Earth the world of death," Aiko began, her voice echoing through the vast space. "Because of our wars, our disasters, and our relentless struggle for survival. But you have never truly seen its beauty, not just in its landscapes or ecology, but in the very spirit of humanity." She paused, her gaze sweeping over rows of beings with strange shapes. Some had scales, others radiant skin, some were just floating energy forms. Yet all of them remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "Yes, we have made mistakes. We have destroyed our own environment, only to learn how to restore it. But from those mistakes, we learn the most important lesson, that change is not the enemy. It is the companion of evolution." The screen showed images of Earth. First, the ravaged forests, then the efforts to replant them. Next, the ruined cities, but gradually being rebuilt with sustainable technology. Earth is not just a planet. It is a story of resilience, creativity, and adaptation. We are not perfect, but it is our imperfections that have driven our progress. And now, we want to share this story with you. Aiko turned to look at Quarim and Sira, her companions. They nodded encouragingly, and Aiko took a deep breath before continuing. "You fear that we will bring chaos to this galaxy. But what you fail to see is that we also bring opportunity. An opportunity to learn from one another, to grow together. We do not exist just to compete, but to cooperate." A delegate from the Lavark species, with a slender body and eyes like sparkling gems, stood up. "Aiko," he said, his voice deep and resonant, "you speak of cooperation, but what has humanity proven to make us believe this cooperation will be beneficial?" Aiko smiled, prepared for the question. "Sir," she replied, "I do not ask you to believe immediately. I only ask for a chance. Let us prove it. You have seen our ability to adapt, now, see our ability to create." She gestured, and a space map appeared on the screen, showing planets facing ecological crises. "Let us help. On Earth, we have learned how to regenerate destroyed environments. We can apply those lessons to these planets. If we fail, you can return to your decision to isolate us. But if we succeed, it will be proof that cooperation is not just possible, but necessary." In the hall, murmurs began to rise. Some delegates whispered to each other, while others pondered thoughtfully. Another delegate, with transparent wings and a soft voice, spoke. "Your proposal is not only bold, but it also has merit. However, we need time to discuss." Aiko nodded. "I understand. But I believe this is not just an opportunity for Earth, but for the entire Union. We cannot continue to fear differences. We must learn how to turn them into a collective strength." After the meeting, Aiko, Quarim, and Sira walked down the long corridor, the light of distant stars shining through the large windows. Sira looked at her, eyes filled with emotion. "You did well, Aiko. No matter the outcome, you've planted a seed that no one can ignore." Quarim nodded. You are not just from Earth. You are a symbol of hope. Aiko smiled, but deep inside, she knew the journey was far from over. Change doesn't happen overnight. But today, she had laid the first stone for a new era, one where humanity was no longer isolated but seen as an important part of the vast galaxy. The light from 3 suns gradually faded in the crystal sky, making way for the brilliant expanse of the Milky Way stretching endlessly. In a small room at the Academy, Kira sat in contemplation, surrounded by her new alien friends. The screen in front of them displayed an array of data, charts, and updated statistics. The Union was beginning to change. Cultural exchange programs were soaring, artistic and technological innovations were flourishing, and it seemed the entire galaxy was stepping into a new era. Hell, the colorful, furry friend, bounced up excitedly. They're calling you the evolution bringer. Did you know that? Since the exchange program started, things have been changing so fast, they can hardly believe it. Vector, with his glowing crystalline form, gently interjected, yes, but they're also worried. Some say we're changing too quickly, that humanity's adaptability is a double-edged sword. Kira smiled, her gaze steady as she looked toward the distant galaxy. That's not something to fear. Change is always an opportunity. We can do more than just survive, we can learn and grow together. Suddenly, the door to the room opened. Zakir, the elderly mentor, walked in with a half-serious, half-proud look. The Academy has decided to keep you for another semester. But remember, next time, if you plan on causing that much chaos, at least give me a heads up. Kira laughed. Can't promise that, Master. How can we change if we don't break a few rules? They all looked up at the sky, which had once seemed distant, but now held the promise of a hopeful future. Below them, the chimes of new systems rang not as warnings of danger, but as signals of the new possibilities humanity was bringing. However, as night fell, somewhere in the dark corners of the Academy, a secret meeting was taking place. There were forces within the Union still wary of the rapid changes. Humanity brings hope, but they could also bring destruction, a cold voice echoed. We must prepare for both possibilities. But tonight, that did not matter. In her sleep, Kira dreamed of Earth where the most dangerous creatures were also the most loyal companions. And in a far corner of the galaxy, the light from a distant star flickered, like a sign of a future that no one dared to predict.